Well, welcome to our program here with Desert Apologetics. I'm here with Greg Koukl, one of the greats of the Christian community. And Greg, why don't you introduce yourself for our listeners here and just give us a brief introduction, who you are and what you do.
Well, Greg Koukl, the president and founder of Stand to Reason. When you found an organization, you can make yourself president, so that kind of goes together. That's great. Part. And we're actually in our 30th year as an organization. Our goal is to make Christian ambassadors, people that engage in a thoughtful, reflective way, can navigate tactically well. I actually wrote a book about that called Tactics, and understand the truth of Christianity well enough to convey it in a reasonable and compelling kind of fashion. So I write, I speak, I run a team of 18 different people, and here I am now with your Desert Apologetics Conference. Glad to be here. It's beautiful weather here in Palm Springs. Yeah,
thank you for being with us. We do appreciate it. I know personally, I've been blessed by your ministry, and I'm excited to actually interview you, Greg. And your topic today is actually anchored in the truth.
That's right.
And you have a funny little phrase there. You put, truth is not ice cream. So we'll kind of pick your mind on that. What does it mean that, or why is it important that Christians ought to be anchored in the truth?
Yeah, first of all, kudos for you saying pick your mind. Because people say, pick your brain. I say, you can't pick my brain unless you're a brain surgeon. You need a scalpel for that. You are careful. That's good. Pick my mind. All right. The trend right now in our culture, and it affects everybody, not just non-Christians, but Christians as well, is that claims to truth, especially claims that are religious or moral, but not just that area, even claims that have to do with a whole bunch of other things, the truth of the claim is based on what the person who makes the claim feels, okay?
Sure.
So you mentioned about ice cream, for example. Well, we could say Haagen-Dazs butter pecan ice cream is delicious, all right? Well, that kind of depends. That would be true for me, but it may not be true for you. In other words, for me as a subject, that's an individual, I may prefer the flavor of the ice cream, but you may not prefer it. And this is why I could say it is true that Haagen-Dazs butter pecan ice cream is delicious, and you could say it's not true that it's delicious, and we're not contradicting each other.
Right.
Because we're not talking about the ice cream. We are talking about our preferences.
Sure.
Now, if I said Haagen-Dazs butter pecan ice cream is a medication that can control diabetes. Well, nobody believes that. Would that were the case, but that is a different kind of claim. In the first case, when I'm talking about the flavor, I'm talking about what I like, or what you would be talking about, what you like, whatever. We're talking about something on the inside here. When we talk about the capability of the exact same ice cream to do something like manage a disease, now we're talking about something out there in the world. We're not talking about personal preferences, right? So in the first case, we could have different points of view, and it isn't like, you're wrong, Albert. You don't, you're a sinner because you don't like Haagen-Dazs butter pecan. You're going to hell because, what's with that? But when we talk about, we use the concept of truth in a little different way, like I just described. Now we're talking about the way the world is.
Yeah.
In the first case, those claims are neither true nor false. They are only true for the individual who believes it.
Yeah.
In the second case, it is either true or false. And if a person actually believes that Haagen-Dazs butter pecan ice cream can control their diabetes, ice cream doesn't do that. Insulin does that.
Right.
And so therefore, they're mistaken on that claim, and it's also dangerous, okay? So now we have, in common parlance in our culture, okay, two different ways of understanding the word truth. Something can be true in an ice cream kind of way, and something can be true in an insulin kind of way. Gravity, for example. Gravity is true in an insulin kind of way, okay? If you don't believe in gravity, you're not going to float away. Right? It still has its hold on you. So the truth of objective truth about things in the outside world, as it were, is not dependent on what I think.
Yeah, it's true outside of you.
It's true outside of you. It's not, what philosophers say, it's mind independent. But the truth, the ice cream kind of truth, is truth that's inside of us. It's mind dependent, okay? It's what I believe. Now, the reason this is important for Christians to understand is because for the most part, when people talk about truth in our culture, especially as it comes to religious things and moral things, they are talking about truth like it's ice cream.
Yeah.
All right? And that's why they could say, well, Christianity is true for you, but Hinduism is true for him. And you're both right. And they're not be bugged about the apparent contradiction. There is no contradiction. I'll tell you somebody who's not going to say that. An atheist isn't going to say that. Because they think atheism is true in the objective sense and Christians are wrong.
Right.
At least in their case, even though we disagree with them, they are thinking about Christianity or religious topics in the appropriate fashion.
Yeah.
It's either true or false. Don't quit playing games with this true for you, true for me kind of nonsense,
right.
Kind of thing. Now, here's the bugaboo in our culture right now, Albert, and that is that there's a whole bunch of Christians that are buying the truth as ice cream kind of thing. Yeah. Yes, I believe in Jesus, but that's my personal view.
Right.
Well, it is their personal view, but they're saying more than that. They are relativizing their view. They're saying Jesus is my flavor. Maybe you can try Jesus and you might like him as your flavor. Jesus isn't a flavor, though. That isn't why he came, to be a flavor. See if you like him, kind of thing. He came as insulin, not as ice cream. And my concern is a lot of Christians do not, they are lost in the word game, the rhetoric. And so consequently, they are not deeply committed to making an insulin kind of claim regarding Christianity, okay? What we're saying is that Jesus is insulin, that he's gravity. Whether you believe it or not doesn't ever change anything about who he is and what he's done. He either did it and was it or not.
Right.
It's either true or false. Now, we have apologists, this is what we're doing here at our conference, trying to give the reasons why we can be confident that our claim about the truth, capital T, objective truth of Christianity is actually true. And that really helps people to see, oh, wait a minute, even Christians, maybe we're really onto something here. Even though they're in church, they're still a little bit, uncertain. Okay, so conferences like this are as important for Christians as they are for the non-Christians that Christians will talk to. Yeah. So this kind of positions this whole idea of truth as being really critical, and it's not just critical for Christians. Understanding the nature of truth, that there is a world there is a way the world is, and it's important for us to know the way the world is, at least in certain critical areas, is important for everybody, not just Christians. If you don't believe in gravity, and you walk off the roof, gravity takes over. Not good. And so reality has a way of bruising people who don't take it seriously.
So now Jesus said in John 14:6, right? I am the way, the truth.
That's right.
And in his high priestly prayer in John 17, he says, sanctify them in your word. Your word is truth. Right. And he uses that phrase again. What are some of the dangers that you see of the church actually embracing some of these relativistic worldviews and understanding of things?
Yeah.
What dangers does the church face with that?
Well, the dangers, of course, is that they get taken by a lie and not by the truth. Just an observation about those two passages. Actually, Jesus is using the word truth in a different way in the John 14 than he is in John 17. This is all this upper room discourse. Yeah. But in John 17, what he's saying is, thy word is truth. In other words, you can count on the statements and claims being made in Scripture as being factual. The things that Scripture affirms are factual. You want to know what the world is like? You read the Bible. I read the Bible, I start at the beginning and I read to the end, and then I start at the beginning and read to the end. And I have little boxes I check off every time I finish a chapter or a book. Now, I don't do it all in a year. It takes me about 2.5 years. But the reason I want to keep reading through the Bible continually is because I want to be continually informed about what reality is actually like. And the world is discipling everybody else. And it's trying to disciple me and my kids and my wife and everybody. They are constantly telling you what the world is like.
Yeah.
But what reality is like, but they got a lot of it wrong. And they got the important things wrong, okay? That's why Paul says in Colossians 2, do not be taken captive by philosophy and empty deception according to the traditions of men, instead of according to Christ. So that's the John 17. You want to get the facts about the world? There it is. Now, what is the fact about the world when it comes to the issue of salvation? That's Jesus. And so when Jesus says, I am the way, I am the truth, he's almost saying that, and I am the life. He's almost saying the same thing in three different ways. And this is common in biblical writings where you have parallelisms or repetition, and each is meant to reinforce the meaning of the other. So when Jesus says, I am the truth, he's not saying I am a fact.
Yeah.
That's John 17. He's using the word truth to affirm that he is the way. Remember when Pilate says, what is the truth, you know? Well, he's not confused on what the truth as facts mean. He's talking, I think, about the big picture. What's it all about? What is the meaning of life? What's all going on here? And Jesus is saying, I'm the guy who knows all about that, and it's centered in me. So if Christians are not clear on both aspects of truth, the clarification on the nature of reality we get from the scripture itself, thy word is truth, and that the clarification informs us that there is a rescuer for humanity. Because humanity needs rescue, and it can't rescue itself. God sent a rescuer, and that rescuer is Jesus. He is the way, and he is the truth regarding those things. And apart from him, there's no truth. He's the light. All of that fits together.
And he's
Make sense?
Alone as well. You know, he mentions in that passage that no one can come to the Father except through him,
me.
which
That's
is
right.
that one way. So,
That's right.
You know, Clay does a good job of explaining the evil in the world and our nature being really totally depraved, excuse me. And
it's also deprived too. So you're right.
Yeah, I was right about that. So yeah, and you know, why is it important that I think our culture, when I look into what's taking place in our culture, we don't really like telling people that you are deprived and depraved.
Yeah, depraved, right.
We don't like saying that, and because of that ice cream fill, right? The preference issue is, or the preference. We don't want to make them feel bad, but that's not actually rooted in truth. We really are. And I guess this is the evangelistic side of me. But why is it important that we emphasize that side, that we are actually depraved and deprived, and need that Savior?
Well, it's important because everybody is suffering from a problem. And the problem is sin that leads to judgment that's on them, okay? Jesus said in John 3, he who believes is not judged, but he who has not believed has been judged already. Now, why is that? Because they haven't believed. It's not because they haven't believed. Bad, you haven't believed. Belief in Jesus is the rescue. It isn't the problem. It's like saying a person died. What did he die of? Not going to the doctor. You don't die of not going to the doctor. You die of a disease. The doctor's the solution, okay? The problem is something else. And so people are being judged, and it's a fait accompli as far as Jesus is concerned. It's done. It's a done deal. You don't believe it's a done deal, okay? Somebody says earlier, the same chapter, the truth has come into the world, the light has come into the world, and men loved darkness rather than light, okay? I guess we got appropriate sound effects in the background here. Now I got a siren. You know, the house is on fire. The house is burning. Who's going to put it out? Okay, only one fireman, and that's Jesus. So this is why it's so critical, I think, that when you think of it, the gospel is good news. Well, it's only good news in light of the bad news.
Right.
And if we are not positioning the good news in light of the bad news, the good news has no significant meaning. That's ice cream then. We aren't selling flavors. We're selling rescues, and we're not even selling it. I mean, we're offering it, as a free gift. But I'll tell you, there's a secret about this that a lot of people don't realize. And we have to tell people they're guilty. They already know it. They already know it. How do they already know it? Because they're made in the image of God, and they have certain capabilities being made in the image of God to assess their own circumstances, okay? I spoke at the University of California, Berkeley, We call it Cal out here on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Berkeley, as some people call it now. And I lectured to, there must have been 1,500 people in the audience. They had overflow rooms. At the end of my talk, I addressed the issue of guilt. And I said, there's something everybody in this room knows about themselves. You know, they got a bad self-image. Why do they have a bad self-image? Because they look down inside, they see something broken.
Yeah.
They don't try to keep it from other people. And we have a word for that. What is the word that we use to describe the bad feeling we have about ourselves because we know of our own brokenness? And I let them supply it. This is Cal.
Yeah.
I hear it. Guilt, 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 guilt. I said, yeah, we all feel guilty. Why?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know, maybe we feel guilty because we are guilty.
Right.
And I said, the answer to guilt is not denial. That's relativism.
Yep.
The answer to ice cream.
Ice cream, yeah.
The answer to guilt is forgiveness. And this, I said, is where Jesus comes in. So now notice I chose my words, though, and this is where sometimes we're not careful with it. The answer to guilt isn't Jesus. Strictly speaking, that doesn't make any sense to them. Why do I need Jesus? Why is he the answer? The answer to guilt is forgiveness.
Yeah, that's good.
And Jesus has done something so that forgiveness is available to you, okay? So some ways we haven't really explained it clearly. So I had a conversation with a fellow once. I gave a presentation at a Barnes & Noble. I'd written a book and they wanted me to come in and give a pitch, and then people were there in chairs and they asked questions. So a Jewish man comes up to me, he says, why do I need Jesus? He said, the book topic was on something else. It was on relativism, actually. That was the title of the book. He said, why do I need Jesus? I'm Jewish. I try to obey God in every way that I know. I believe in God. I try to do that. So why do I need Jesus? And I said, let me ask you a question, okay? And I think using questions are really valuable here because it helps people get in touch with what's actually going on inside, and it will help you too. I wrote a book on that too. It's called Tactics, but just a shameless plug, okay? And the question is, do you think that people who do bad things ought to be punished for them? And he said, well, since I'm a prosecuting attorney, yeah. Now, I didn't know he was an attorney, but you know what? Most people have that sense. Yeah, you do bad things, you ought to be punished, you know? Right. Okay, great. I agree with you. We're on the same team here. Okay, second question. Do you ever done any bad things? He said, yeah, guess so. Now, if he would have said no, I would have said, I want to talk to your wife.
Right.
Or your kids, you know, right. Then he said, yes, I have. And I said, so have I. Okay, so we both are in agreement now. And then I said, but do you realize where we're at right now? He said, no. I said, we both believe that people who do bad things ought to be punished, and we both acknowledge that we've done bad things. I said, do you know what I call that? What? I said, bad news.
Right.
Okay, now notice, I didn't tell him that he's guilty. He told me. Right?
Right.
I didn't tell him he's under judgment. Essentially, he told me because of the question that I asked of him, you know, and his general awareness of his own fallenness and the idea that judgment is appropriate for people who do bad things.
Yeah.
Now we're at that same spot. That's the bad news. Now we can talk about the good news. You asked a question about Jesus because Jesus helps with this problem.
Yeah.
He solved this problem for us. So that's how that can work together in a conversation about the judgment guilt issue without us thumping people on the chest and saying bad, bad, bad.
Right. And I've heard it said, apologetics is really knowing what you believe and why you believe it.
That's right.
And just being able to communicate that effectively.
Right.
You mentioned, I've heard R.C. Sproul say, I've never had anybody say back to me after, well, let me word it this way. R.C. Sproul was lecturing and he said, when I ask people, or I say, you're guilty, and you know you're guilty, I've never had anybody push me back on that. Because we instinctively know that we're guilty.
Sure.
And but I was listening, kind of eavesdropping between you and Lee Strobel, and you were speaking about the Sermon on the Mount and how we need to be righteous, that we actually, according in front of God, we need to have this righteousness that exceeds that of the Pharisees. Yeah. Can I just pick your brain here on the last one of this last?
Yeah. Now you said brain. You didn't say pick your mind. So there you
go. There you go.
Drop the ball. Never mind. Okay. What I gave you with the right hand, I take back with the left now. Okay. So this is really significant because what Jesus did is he clarified what the law requires. people think, and they've said this, many people have said this, that Sermon on the Mount is the greatest moral teaching we've ever read. Really? Have you ever read it? Okay. Blessed, 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 blessed. Oh, that's all nice. Okay. Makes you feel good if you're persecuted or poor in spirit or all those other things, you know.
Yeah.
And then he says, by the way, your righteousness needs to exceed the righteousness of the most religious people in that community. Yeah. That would be the scribes and Pharisees. That's like saying to a Roman Catholic, you have to be more holy than the Pope.
Yeah.
Okay, or else you're in big trouble. And then he starts delineating that. He says, the law says you shall not murder. Oh, I haven't murdered. Do you ever call your brother a fool? Empty head? Raka? Oh, sure, of course, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
And he says, the law says you shouldn't commit adultery. Oh, never did that. Did you ever think about it? You're going to hell. Okay, this is not good news. And he continues. And then he ends that section by saying, you are to be perfect as my heavenly Father is perfect. Now, in that case, he didn't say, to an individual, you're bad, 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 bad. He essentially used the law to demonstrate what the requirements were, and that put the burden on their shoulders. Yeah. He made it really, really clear, because he's talking to an audience, he's not talking to an individual, But when he does talk to an individual, he does probe a little bit. At John chapter 4, there's the woman at the well. You have five husbands and the one you're living with. He just says, go call your husband. Don't have one. Yeah, you've had 5, and the one you're living with is not your husband. Yeah. Now, that's prophetic, and that really got her attention, obviously.
Right.
But notice how there is this emphasis there. This willingness to touch on the moral issue. You have a need, and it's a real need, and it's a moral need. And Jesus is the answer to that need. By the way, this is the answer to the question, why is Jesus the only way? Well, the answer is because he's the only one to solve the problem.
Yeah. He's the only one that lived that righteousness that we couldn't.
That's 2 parts. That's the first half. He lived the life that we didn't live, but we're supposed to. But he did more than that. He paid the price that he did not owe, but we did. And that's the 2 parts of justification. We get his righteousness because he got our evil. He paid for that. That makes it possible for us to get the righteousness of Christ. So those. Incidentally, one other thing I'll add to this, and this is going to be a shocker to a lot of your viewers. Okay, the gospel is preached 13 times in the book. 13 times in the book of Acts. It's preached by the people who Jesus personally trained to take the gospel after them. You know how many times they preached the love of God in those 13 times? Not a single time. The word love doesn't even appear in the book of Acts. Now, the love of God is manifest there, but they focused on something else. Okay, I'm not going to make a big deal about that, but I'm just saying that's a fact, and people can make up their own minds about how that ought to inform the way we communicate the gospel. Okay, and that has altered the way I communicate it. I want people to see their need, to be aware of their need.
Yeah.
And before I offer the solution to their need.
Sure.
And so it's just an interesting little fact that I found by accident just by reading every single verse in the book of Acts, looking for the way the gospel was preached. And that freaked me out.
I just learned something just right now. So, Greg, I appreciate that. That is super helpful. So I do think that our audience will be blessed by this conversation. I know you got to get up there soon, so we're going to let Greg go. But, hey, we want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Albert.
And if you want more resources like this, more content like this, check out desertapologetics.com.
Oh, also, str.org, if I can throw that in.
Yeah.
Stand to Reason, str.org. There you go. That's us.
All right. God bless.